design technology specialist at Kids Inc. I've been following his journey and got to know actually from my colleague from IIT Bombay about the tools he built back at Ultratech and now at Kids Inc. So really wanted to host you on the show to share your journey from SEP to till this date, what are the things you built, and
Mhm.
hopefully share some learnings along the way. So thanks for being on the show, Adnan.
Thank you so much, Mayur, for inviting.
Yeah. So Adnan, people who don't know about your journey
Hmm.
from SEPT, tell us
Hmm.
about your interests. What were the kind of opportunities you were looking after SEPT? How did you align your interest from like traditional design background to technology?
Yes. So my journey for architecture started very early. So basically, it was in 11th or 12th standard when I was figuring out as to what next step I'll take right in my life. That is when I was always interested in computers, computer science, all of these things, right? But staying in India, one realizes very quickly that computer science market no is very saturated, and I there was some part of me which always wanted to be like a founder, have a startup, all of these things. So I was like, what market can I tap into? And that is where architecture seemed like a very good proposal. So I was like, see, there are two kinds of knowledge that I personally think there are. One is something that is like 1 plus 1 equals 2. Anywhere around the world, it's the same thing. That's basically your computer science, right? And then there is more of this art, culture, all of these things, for which I feel that you should go to a university. You need that environment, you need right people around you to learn that, right? So yeah, that was a starting point wherein I felt like, okay, if I want to learn coding or something like that, I can always learn it from YouTube. But I
Mm.
might rather spend some years of my life in an architecture school, and then probably I can combine that both to create something. That is how the architecture journey started. And yeah, like from first second year onwards only, I was interested in computational design, all of these things. And that was how sept came into picture.
But is it in the curriculum they have
No,
more
no,
more
no,
options, or you had to
no.
figure out?
So one of the good things about sept was that sept has these core architecture subjects which are studios. But the other thing was it has a lot of electives, right? And there are like 100 electives that are given, and you can pick any elective that you like. What I did was I picked electives which were non-architectural. So I
Mm.
took data science, I took azure, I took gis, all of
Oh,
these.
they're being taught in SEPT? I thought it
uh,
was just folk.
so they are taught in other departments rather, other than architecture. So if you go to sbst, which is more on engineering side, they have masters there, which is masters
Mm.
of geomatics, wherein gis is taught. Then you have like again in engineering, azure is taught, data science is taught, all of these things, right? So I ended up taking electives from architecture into other departments, and that really helped me somewhat. But more or less it was like a self study again. So I started in the first year exploring a tool that I could build on, wherein I first used again Blender initially for 1 year ish. Then I came across FreeCAD, and FreeCAD was like, oh, it is a great platform. And then by year 2 or 3, I discovered Revit and Dynamo and Rhino and Grasshopper. And Grasshopper came like a blessing, right? Because you could quickly iterate your ideas and all. So that was how I ended up.
Nice. And while navigating through that journey, were
Mhm.
there any seniors or alumni which you look forward to that, okay, I want to be in this direction or this path?
There were very few, 2 or 3 people who were exploring computational design, but they were more inclined on creating these forms out of
Mm.
computational design, like fluid forms, all of these. That gave me a direction, but I always wanted to do something based on data. So I was always of
Mm.
an opinion that the building might be rectangular, it doesn't matter, but it has to be derived from certain principles, algorithms, all of these. So that way it was like little bit unique at
I see.
that point. Hmm.
So there were two branches where people in the algorithmic were either like deterministic
Hmm.
parametric design workflow or data driven like machine
Hmm. Hmm.
learning based design. So I
Yes.
see.
Mm.
And, and after that, tell us how you ended up at Ultratech.
So Ultratech, so we had participated in a competition which was Ultratech Village 2047, and luckily we were one of the winners there. So and in that also we had developed a project. So the idea of the project was that cities can no longer take people, and it was based on a Gandhian principle that we need more towns and self-sustaining towns. And the idea was also that we want to create a housing that could be replicated anywhere in India. This was, I think, 2017 or 18. And me and my partner Prutha, our idea was that, hey, a single form of housing geometry cannot be replicated everywhere, but rather you can have same logic, and when the site changes, the manifestation will change. That was a preliminary idea there. We had proposed it, and it kind of we were selected as winners. Post that, I was selected in Google. So Google at that time was had launched Explore ML program, wherein they had selected around 13 projects that people were doing across the machine learning domain at that time. It was pretty early stage at that point of time. I saw somewhere on LinkedIn that something like this was launched. I was in my mind thinking that how will I enter something like this, but I applied nonetheless, seeing that, hey, let me give a shot. If I'm selected, well and good. If not, it doesn't matter. I was lucky that I was selected, and when I met the other people who were selected, everyone was from IIT, computational background, all of these. But probably the reason why they had selected my project was also because it was little unique, wherein others
Mm.
were doing weather analysis or image-based processing or something like that. I was trying to figure out how to create plans with data and using algorithms, AIML, and all of these things were happening. I also did my thesis in sept on similar topic. We graduated. I initially also did for 1 year architectural projects,
Mm.
wherein I was designing buildings, and then I think Rajat from Ultratech approached me. He had seen somewhere my post on LinkedIn and all, and he then, when he was doing research, he also came across that we had won this competition, and he was like, can you develop something on these lines further, are you interested? And we were also quite nascent at this time, and I was like, okay, this is a good opportunity to create a company and start doing work and all of those things, right? So that is how Ultratech
This
happened.
is 2019, right?
2020, I think. Yeah,
20.
early.
Okay, okay.
Yeah.
Mm.
So that is when all of these things were happening. I had just graduated, and we got this opportunity.
Nice. And so you got the scope from Ultratech. That uh,
Yeah.
what was the goal? What were the challenges?
So Ultratech has a platform which is known as UTech, and what UTech wants to do is uh, UTech basically targets tier 2, tier 3 cities most of the time, and they give architectural rendering, then virtual reality, all of these services at a very very minimal cost. It is in ballpark number of 5,000 to 15,000 kind of a thing, right?
Oh,
And at that point of time, they were looking for solutions that could some way automate their processes, right? So that they want to provide a good quality to their clients, and they wanted to have consistency and some level of automation in the general process, and that is where we were involved, right?
I see. And
Mm.
what are the skills you had to learn for this role?
So I actually, what we were doing was we proposed them a solution, which was again something based on Rhino and Grasshopper at that particular time. But in the journey, we ended up building the entire thing on Python, right?
Mm.
And a lot of
Like
things
Grasshopper Python or
in
independent?
Grasshopper Python, and
Okay.
independent,
Okay.
like we at that time there was no Python 3 in Grasshopper, so there was a
Mm.
plugin which was CHG Python something, the
Yeah, yeah,
background.
yeah.
So we had to write custom scripts in that to actually do what they wanted us to achieve. And yeah, and that's also another point wherein my journey kind of diverges, wherein that was a very realistic call that I had made very early in my life, that a lot of designers, or a lot of people who are working in this domain, uh, are probably creating web apps or are creating their own custom softwares, which is very good. I 100% agree that should be done. But moreover, when I'm working with these industry partners, I realize that they have architects. They have architects who are 15 years into a particular software, sometimes 20 years, and asking them to use a new platform
Mm,
completely, which is not what they have been using, is a task, right? So as a developer, your job is not only to develop the platform but also to implement it, and implement it successfully, and you have to make sure that it gets done. uh, that's the challenging part. Building is something we can
mm.
sit in an office and do, but actually, so that is why we whenever I provide something consultancy, I always try to go with some of the other industrial standard software, so that people don't have to learn everything from zero, right? So that was about it, like
Yeah, the distribution is there, the friction
distribution.
to change.
Hmm.
So there's a big market of plugins itself
Hmm.
where
Yes,
even
and
other.
that's something to tap into. And plus, one realizes very quickly that yes, you can build some features, but again, there are issues with these industry standard softwares. But what a lot of them do is they are much mature platform,
Mm,
right? As a something, and for somebody who is doing kind of a bootstrap, it's very easy to build something on top of them rather than to build something from scratch, when you are providing these services. So that was a learning that I had.
yeah. And actually, that's a great point. I would like to share one
Hmm.
thing. So we had the choice also,
Hmm.
with 3D Guru.
Hmm.
If you want to build a very ground up way of changing the way
Hmm.
you do 3D model,
Hmm.
sometimes the application has limited access to like all you can do is whatever they have provide public access of various
Hmm.
geometry
Hmm.
related functions.
Hmm.
But if you want to create, let's say, a totally new way of 3D modeling,
Hmm.
sometimes depending on that problem statement you might need to develop, but most of the times one
Hmm.
could develop plugins.
Hmm.
Yeah.
For me, these 3D platforms are nothing more than like Chrome, right? They're geometry engines at the end of the
Yeah.
day. And you build an app behind the screen which just renders your 3D model, right? So I like to use them as more of a rendering engines other than anything else, right? So if I can create a cube, I can create a wall, I can create trim, all of these are more than enough functions for me. And then once, the other problem is also that we are still, like as of today also, I feel that we are still at a very early stage wherein our models that we are producing are not ready for, they are not good for construction kind of models, right?
Yes.
There is always a human intervention that's needed. Yes, you have generated a geometry, what next? The architect
Mm,
or the designer will have to do a little bit of editing on top of it, right? And if they are comfortable in the environment where they can do editing, the process of implementation becomes much better. This is my
mm.
personal opinion again, but yeah.
Yeah, like, and in my startup we learned the hard way. So we were building on top of 3GS,
Hmm.
so another like
Hmm.
computer graphics library. But then, okay, we had the benefit where we could do
Hmm.
all the
Hmm.
functions from scratch, but
Yes.
also we had to rewrite all the logic of
Yeah.
trimming,
Streaming.
extruding all the components.
Um,
So it was like, okay, all this web-based
hmm.
3D software, this like,
Hmm.
and as a designer, even if you don't have one function, oh,
One function,
the
it becomes
observe, and they're like, no, this
no,
not the
this
platform is
does not
not
work.
perfect, and it's
Yeah.
like, damn.
And like,
So much
for we
money.
have worked with little bit of 3GS, and you quickly realize that it's almost like if you start building on 3GS now, it's like almost reinventing the wheel, and that
It's very
slows
vanilla.
down you.
Yeah, yeah. It's yeah.
Mm.
So that's why I think we need a good standard. Rhino.js has some templates of
Mm.
they have limited functionality which
Mm.
using their JavaScript library, but
Mm.
still like all the complex operations are not. You need then Rhino common server
Yes.
to do that. But
Yes.
yeah, we are on the same page where okay, if the problem is solved
Mm.
within the plugin, that's the
Mm.
best
Best thing
advantage
to.
of distribution and
Yeah.
no change of software of
Yes.
adoption. is
Mm-hmm.
avoided.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a good. But so there are multiple approaches here. Either if
Mm-hmm.
you're working in a firm,
Mm-hmm.
you know what are the workflow automations you need. Either you can develop custom Grasshopper script or plugin. What are like I know you also did like consultancy and
Mm-hmm.
startup. What are some opportunities you think that are untapped in the plugin world or the architects? Maybe in the SketchUp also, not limiting to
Yes,
Grasshopper.
yes. So there is a great opportunity. See, if we are talking about Indian context, right?
Mm,
There are first, are you targeting? There are various kind of clients that you will meet, right? The first client that you will meet is usually an architect, right? Because you want to develop tools for designers, architects in general, right? What are the tools they need, right? So something that can help them with quick generation of ideas. Why are ideas generating important part, right? Personally, one is, yes, they can show the client a quick overview of how, on what direction they want to take, and then they can start building on top of it, right, at conceptual level. But also what happens is designing is an extensive process. So what usually ends up happening is you start with a conceptual idea, then you build on top of it and top of it, layer by layer by layer, and then when you are, let's say, at a designed uh, stage, like secondary tertiary design stage, you one realizes that, hey, this is not something that the client intended, and then again going back to the scratch and starting the process again is a very difficult task. So if you can explore enough options, sometimes that's also a human limitation, that you can't think of all ideas. Now if there is a tool that can help with ideation, perfect. That's something that architects greatly want. The other thing is automation of menial tasks, annotations, something like, okay, I have produced drawings, how do I get uh, output from it, drawings from it, elevations from it, all of these. A lot of times we have given simple consultancy wherein we have told people to just use a beam software, because in
mm,
India beam is not a big thing as of now. A lot of architects still rely on architects. Now if you give them a beam platform and you develop some scripts over top of it, nothing like it. So these are, the other part is when you are working with some of, and we had opportunity to work with Godrej and Adani and all a little bit, wherein what they want is they want town planning level things, right? So let's say I have a big chunk of my area. Now what you can do is, based on the location, you can feed in FSI FAR data, you can see how the rainfall happens, simulations, all of these things, and you can give them an overview of how much flats they can accommodate, how much ROI they will generate, how much, where should be what placed, all of these things, right? Giving them this brief idea can then help them that take that to an architect and then detail it out,
mm,
right? So that is the market. The third market, which kind of UTech does, is going through the direct customer, B2C, wherein you are helping them visualize, okay, or give them plan section. The challenge is, okay, so in this particular third case, what happens is, let's say we are generating a plan. Now that plan might not be as good as uh, an architect would make, but 95% of Indian market, if you see statistically, is not hiring architects in the first place. They can't afford to hire architects in the first place.
correct.
So if you have an algorithm that can do a 50% job of what an architect does, it's still much better. The sustainable impact that you will have, the environmental impact, all of these, and even the livelihood or the quality of the construction, everything will be much better than them going to a subcontractor and getting the house built, right? So these are the three main areas I think one can start working on.
Dude, I love the approach. And like I think like once spend enough time in domain, like
Mm-hmm.
so as a startup founder, I did a lot of market evaluation. Like making money from architects or
Mm-hmm.
designers is very tough. Like even
It's very yeah, sorry.
yeah, yeah. No, no, I'm just like to finish up my point is like sometimes there's a great solution. It will save 10 hours of your time, but the mentality is like okay, there's always a cheap intern, or like the mindset is different. And so okay, designers don't have the next big bucket is construction companies. Then they have their own like
Mm-hmm.
bureaucracy and politics. And
Structure.
then okay, maybe you directly go to consumer. uh but like so but then there are still few aspect of
Mm.
the, like you can't as of now fully automate all the things. There's still
Yes.
like construction details,
Mm.
there's still like a human in the loop needed
Mm.
at this stage. So the monetization is a very big challenge.
It's super big challenge, because again you have knocked it on point. Like for example, if you go to architects, so architects in India are not well paid, right? To be
Mm.
honest. And then if you are trying to get chunk out of it, that
Yeah,
less
it's
paid, it's impossible, right? And so they will always find, and plus, to them trust you. They know that if I give 5,000, 10,000 to an intern, they'll work for entire month,
mm,
and they know that at the end of the process they will get something. In your
yes.
platform, it's not sure. Like you
Mm,
can show them endless demos, you can show them everything, but that is always something that will bug. Going to again these big companies, there is implementation, as I was saying, is a large problem, because you are not in control of implementing everything. And then if you're going to B2C directly, the problem is that your app has to be like clean, top notch,
yes.
for them to use it. Because if you are delivering half baked product, it's a house that somebody is going to build.
Mm,
Again, there are COL laws, bylaws, structure, all of these things, and you can't mess with all of these things. uh, at that particular time, we were also as a company trying to delve into virtual reality, because we felt
yeah.
that all of those things, if we are able to generate these environments and everything, rather than real world into virtual world, it's much better, because there those constraints won't affect, right?
Mm. But then, like, would you charge customers or the real estate people, or like what's
In
the,
the virtual world, so we
yeah,
were trying to create like a house kind of a scenario,
yeah, like
where
walkthroughs and yeah,
walkthroughs and all. But yeah, depends who the client is.
yeah. Because
Mm.
there was a time like post 2015,
Mm.
we saw a lot of VR
Mm.
companies
Mhm.
in our industry, and over time, like pitching the value to like, okay, are you? I've
Mm.
seen people sometimes charge 50,000 rupees for VR demos,
Mm.
and I was like, how much architects is paid
Mm.
for the same kind? You're just visualizing. So it's
Yeah.
like, there is like, even maybe we can think this way, even
Mm.
in B2C,
Mhm.
there is like premium client who
Mhm.
could like go for VR, like I'm ready. But they're like the same target market who can't afford architects, won't
Mhm.
be able to afford VR
Mhm.
as well, I
Mhm.
guess.
What we were trying to do was little bit different, wherein what we were not trying to replicate the realistic scenarios, but we were trying to create through AI worlds which nobody would have experienced otherwise, right? So that's the best advantage of VR. That
Mm,
okay, for example, if I'm replicating, let's say if I want to visit a city, particular city, and I can't actually go fly there, I can use VR and see that city, but that's only a little bit of a monetary value
I
for a
see.
customer. But if I can experience something that I can never experience on earth, probably, or if I can never experience that in real life, that kind of a structure or something like that, can that has an additional value. So we were trying to delve into that.
Yeah, dude.
Mm.
But still, in like, there's such a big pain point, even for people paying to
Mm.
architects or not.
Mhm.
This, like, they are putting all their life savings
Mm.
in this dream home, and
Mm.
for a long time, they're
Mm.
just saying 2D layouts, and they can't imagine what they're getting
Imagine,
into.
yes, that's very true, very true. But I think that will sometime soon change, right? Like now we have good devices, wherein once this device, the adoption of these devices come, and once a lot of people start having these devices, it should, I feel, change, right? And that's the process that has been with social media as well, right? So we had earlier communication with text, which transformed into images, Instagram, then reels and TikTok, and then now that social media is slowly going into VR and stuff. Architecture has always been behind, right? So yes, we had plans which I compare to text. Then you have renders, then you now have animations, good animations, effects, and then architecture will soon adapt into that domain of having that realistic virtual reality or sorts, to just have
Mm,
actual experience whether it look good or not.
yeah,
This is
dude.
again
Like,
my belief.
like for me, if we like as like maybe after the first meeting,
Mm,
getting from their mind their ideal vision and
mm,
getting that animated
mm,
walkthrough video, can we shorten that time from like a month to few days?
mm,
Like I would be happy because like some of the people just can't imagine, okay, when you place the sofa in 2D, is it
mm,
gonna take this height or this height? So if that video sometimes spatial walkthrough also
mm,
helps. VR is amazing, good to
mm,
have and always,
mm,
but
mm.
like even can we get this part soon?
Yes, that's something that is untapped, can be
Mm,
tried. Mm.
I see. So anything from like algorithm wise, or did you also work on Vastu at that
Yes,
time?
in Ultratech only. So Vastu was something that they wanted to figure out how to do it automatically. So the plan generator that we worked on has also something called Vastu component, wherein based on the room layout that is generated, uh, they it automatically figures out and Vastu score how compatible it is with Vastu, and then it also gives you a suggestion. Okay, hey, this is not supposed to be placed here. This is supposed to be placed here, etc., etc. So that was something we did, and also like at that time, so there is a little research involved. Like northern Vastu and the southern Vastu is completely different. The
Mm,
Vastu that you have in North India and South India. So we had like a button kind of a thing. Which Vastu are you checking your house according to, and all the
I
small things, right? Uh, hmm,
Yeah. So the challenge, like there are few apps on the Play Store related to Vastu, and like
hmm,
from what I had a
hmm,
discussion with Rajat, like explain
hmm,
that you go to each room and then have a
hmm,
compass direction and
hmm,
measuring those. So the bottleneck
hmm,
is right now no one has codified
hmm,
these rules and have a
hmm,
metrics,
hmm,
uh, because in theory wise the vastu is there, but
hmm,
like
hmm,
algorithm wise
hmm,
there is no clear standard or library
hmm,
for
hmm.
people, so everyone is making their own rules, I guess, for scoring.
So the thing is, yes, Vastu again, like a lot of Indian sciences, is largely debated on. It depends on who is giving the Vastu score and whom you have called to your place to check it, right? But nonetheless, there is a standard matrix also, which you will find similar across multiple books. Whether, let's say, where should be a puja place placed, where should be bedroom placed, bathroom placed, all of these kitchens placed, all of these are pretty standardized, right, across
Mm.
anything. They will remain constant. There are two elements of vastu. One is of course the placement of the rooms in itself, and then let's say you have rooms in correct place, what can you do to correct it? uh, but the correction part we don't deal with, right? That's much on faith. But these, where should the room placed and all, it's pretty much standardized right across the board. And once you and it's very easy to code as well, to be
Mm.
honest, not that challenging.
Nice. And for the layout generation, the
Mhm.
input was, what was the input and what was the output?
Uh, the input was by the client itself as to what do you want, like what are the rooms that you want, how many bathrooms, all of these things, and then and it generated first of all only line segments
Mm.
across your plot, right? And the architects had ability, so it will give you these line segments, vertical and horizontal, and then it will also give you the area. Then there was a manual way in which the architects could simply move these line segments, right?
Is
And
this phone app or a
no, no,
grasshopper?
it's a Rhino thing, right?
Okay, okay. Mm,
So you could move these lines
mm,
horizontally, vertically, how much, and you could do manual tweaking. Then you click a button and it creates walls and everything. And
I
then
see.
there was a place where you could just drop the doors, windows, everything, and then yeah, and then a 3D was generated out of it.
Mix. Yeah, and you need that allowance where architects can do
Can manually
final
change it.
change,
Yes.
because the, as with any algorithm, for the same constraint there are many solutions. So
Mm,
the design space is big. How do you
mm,
narrow down out of 50,000 top 10 arrangements, and
mm, mm,
sometimes having some manual can
mm,
intervention can lock down the preferences of
mm.
the.
Yes, that is something that we wanted to do, like have that manual control.
I see. And what are some problems which you wanted to work but didn't find time, or you still think the industry needs those kind of problems,
So
or like
again,
solution, not problems? Sorry.
my thing is again, something that I want to explore but never got a chance to do is again the web part of things, right?
Web-based
So
solution.
web-based solutions is something that I always want somebody, if they can translate whatever code that I have done through in Dynamo or Grasshopper or Python into a web-based solution. So that's something that I am right now looking for, because that's not my expertise.
Have you
And
used Shape Diver?
tape diver, yes. Again, that was at that point of time we had worked with shape diver as well. uh, at that Now it has changed, but at that time the challenge was that again you could upload everything on grasshopper to there, but there was no way in which somebody could tweak it, right?
Oh, now they have
Now
sliders
they
and
have
everything.
lines there. No, no,
Yeah.
sliders they had then also, but there was no
Okay.
way I would create a polygon also.
Oh, I
I
see.
could also not
Cursor
create a
base.
line, right? So,
Mm,
for example, I'll give you a simple example. Your plots will not always be rectangular. There can be like a unique dimension plot, and
mm,
architect need to give that plot for then the algorithm to design on top of it, right?
mm.
How will you give the plot? So those were simple challenges that we were facing with Shape Diver at that time.
Yeah, it had like the parametric
Hmm.
configuration, but the geometry definition
Yeah, you
manual
cannot
part
draw
wasn't.
anything.
Yeah,
Yeah, now they you have ability to draw and all of those things, so I can relook in a lot of things. Hmm.
I see. Okay, so that is one thing,
Hmm.
because and the reason you want to do it is now it will open up this solution to people
Hmm.
who are SketchUp users, or much more
Much
accessible.
more, yes, much
Yeah,
more accessible, yes.
I see. Cool. How is life after Ultratech? What are you up
So
to these days?
now I have moved to Dubai. I'm working here with a company called KidSync. What again we are trying to do is it's a furniture manufacturer for school, right? So they started as a furniture company which was providing furniture to school. Then they started having interior designers. Now even architecture, and so they do full school turnkey kind of a thing, right, from architecture to furniture, interior design, all of these things. One of the pressing issue they had was generating bill of quantities for these schools, generating POs, all of these things, right? So what we have done is again we have used both. So architects use Revit over here, and interior designers use Rhino over here. So first we did Rhino Revit implementation for the team, and then we have developed scripts wherein what they can do is we have used Speckle, and we have generated codes for all of these furnitures, and there is a panel
Nice.
from which designers can filter out the furniture from their own catalog, the Kidzings catalog, use it to design the space, and then they click a button, and Excel is generated. And that Excel they use for their entire management. They use Zoho. So Zoho has inventory. They have books. They have other it's an ERP solution, total into it. So that Excel can be uploaded to their Zoho platform, and it does PO generation, quotation generation, invoice, sends it to the client. How to automate that part of Zoho as well is something that I'm currently actively working on.
Nice. So very vertical solution where
Hmm.
from designers to end purchase order,
And purchase order.
what, yeah,
Yeah.
streamlining all the operations and all the
Hmm.
IDs are correlated, and yeah,
Correlated, yeah. And it goes till manufacturing, right? So it should hit
nice,
the
nice.
manufacturing, and how to integrate that. And again, that takes me to the first point, that had I been try so this entire thing we have done it in like 7 months. Had we wanted to do something with limited resource from scratch in a platform, it becomes really easy. But because we were building on top of Soho, on top of Rhino, on
Mm,
top of Grasshopper, Dynamo, Revit, the things becomes much simpler. Uh, as to then you just have to through it sometimes is like right now what we are even wanting to move away from Excel and just have an API hit Zoho, and That's all you have to do, right?
Directly, that
Yeah,
manages the
yeah,
whole entries, database entry.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, like I think that's also when uh, as a developer one needs to be aware what are the tools out there, and for the problem in
Hmm,
hand,
hmm,
can you build on top of it rather than doing it from scratch every time, because then it's
hmm,
you could do the same thing in Zoho in a
hmm,
week with the
hmm.
APIs rather than building from scratch
Yes,
and take
an
months.
entire ERP solution by yourself.
Yeah, right. Mm.
Uh,
Yeah, and maybe there might be a point
hmm.
when in production or in later where you are limited by one of the tools you're using,
Yes,
then making it
and
from scratch makes sense.
scratches makes sense. Yes,
Yeah,
I completely agree.
I see.
Hmm.
Cool. What would be your piece of advice for
Hmm.
students who want to take a similar path as yours?
Uh, my advice would be a to, yes, it's a common advice, but start as early as possible, right? And then hold on to it, right? Just keep exploring. Frankly, when somebody like me started, although I would not want to imagine myself as very old, but when I started actually, there were not lot of resources available.
Yeah.
Today I think there are so many resources available, right? I know that when I was learning Rhino and Grasshopper at that time, there were hardly good tutorials available on YouTube as well. Now there are like full-fledged playlists,
Yeah.
right? You can start and you can learn. Plus, if you use GPT or something like that, it makes your task much easier. A lot of people have now given you the roadmap that you need to take. But again, while you are following that roadmap, you need to find your own niche, right,
Mhm.
of what you want to do, and not follow that blindly. But nonetheless, you have that roadmap ready for you. Just start on it and keep building on it. And then a thing also that worked for me was that all the studios that I took in my university, I made a personal point, even though if the faculty liked or not, that I would want to somewhere involve data driven design or computational design.
Mhm.
And because that was the only time I had, right? So why not dive deep, like
It would
dive?
take extra work, but
It would take a
your
little extra work, yes,
persistence
but
would
yes.
learning are immense. Yeah.
Mhm. But and also like the theories and all that we are now defining, at that time I was also not clear of how the theories would be, especially in architecture. That's a lot of importance is given to that. And so in my initial years there was a lot of struggle of actually convincing people that hey, how have I arrived to this particular design, right?
Oh,
All
okay.
faculties would not understand the data driven process. Some are really old, all of these, right? Old school. But by the end you will then have your own theory to explain things, to communicate. You will have your terminologies to explain. And but yeah, that's doable now.
Nice. Any major difference you find between the practices of India versus Dubai, like architecture, construction?
So I will combine. So I have worked as an intern in Renzo Piano as well. So I will combine the Dubai experience and my India experience. One of the things that is superbly well done in India, and is or the domain or the like the group that I come from is the design aspect, right? The design aspect and the attention to details are very well taken care of in India. The spatial quality of places, all of these things, superb. Versus here, you will see that there is a lot more tech integration. So what in India would somebody would spend like, let's say, 1 month to produce good for construction drawings, versus somewhere if you see international practices, their period is really less because they would use simply beam sometimes.
Mm.
A lot of practices in Dubai will have their own small tech team within the design.
Oh,
A lot of Indian practices, like even big architectural practices, still don't have that tech team inside, right? Who will constantly develop internal tools for them.
correct.
Most of the firms here will have that tech team of 3 people, 4 people. Between, let's say, if you are 100 designers, you need 4 people to develop these tools constantly, customize tools according to your need. That's something that's missing in India.
Nice. And I don't know if that can
Hmm.
be changed, or is it like the new generation advocating for it, or is it lack of money for hiring these tech people for R&D and
No, no, like I am in contact with few firms over here, and this is changing. People are now
oh okay.
realizing that okay, hey, we want to change this. They are making effort also, but it's like both. Supply has to be there, and then there should be buyers as well. Right now, we are having some supply of it, some buyers of it. But once the full ecosystem develops, then there will be good growth.
I see. And then what are some learning resources which makes you keep up to date with the trends and the knowledge? Books,
I use
podcasts, anything? Yeah.
I use only two. Most of the time, my source of income is LinkedIn. Like my source of knowledge is
And
LinkedIn, right? Because people are posting what they are doing. I keep
mm,
up with that. Then I'm part of two or three Discord communities that help me keep up, right?
nice.
Other than that, if I want to learn something new, I always go to YouTube. Again, there is a book which is learn something in a hard way. So learn Python hard way, learn this hard way. I believe in that. Whenever I want to learn something, I will start with the biggest problem that's possible and jump into it, and then on the way I will learn smaller things, right? That's the way I would approach things.
Nice.
Hmm.
If you were to teach a course to 18-year-old Adnan, what would you teach?
18-year-old would be me starting architecture. Okay. What
Or
course
maybe
would
like we can keep it 22 if that helps.
22?
Like
Okay. No, no, I understand your point. I would see. One of the things that I tell people, especially my people who are in architecture or all, is that as Indians, no, we at least know three languages. We know Hindi, we know a little bit of English, and mother tongue, right? So three languages we would anyways know. My thing is that even if you know one of these language less, you should at least learn C sharp or Python or some computer language, right?
mm,
Assuming that if you are going to spend more than half of your time, like daily time, with some or the other, either computer, phone, or something, you should know how to communicate with that, right?
learn the
It's
digital
equally important to
language.
communicate with computer that it
Computers.
is with people, right? And what these languages teach you is the logic flow of how things would work. And once you understand that, it becomes very easy to solve your daily tasks, solve your these things, right? So the logic that is used in grasshopper is the same logic that is used in Python, is the same logic that's used in Dynamo. The syntax change, but the logic remains the same. And if you are able to catch that at a very early age, your life will become a lot easier.
I see. I think that's a great point. Look forward to what you're building next. Adnan, I had a great time hosting you on my show, like cheering you for all your next developments.
And I keep seeing your work, and yeah, one of the point is you are also one of the source of my knowledge, right? So if somebody follows you, they will know the entire updates of whatever is happening in the this domain. So yeah.
It's so nice of you to say. I'm just trying, man.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. For people who have more questions or something,
Mhm.
you can reach out Adnan on LinkedIn, and uh, hope to see you in person soon.